As Israel sank lower in the ranks of society, and by the time Rome rose to power, the Israelites' desire for a Savior became focused on one that would save them from their oppressors, which is why when Jesus Christ came in a lowly, humble manner to save them from their sins, they didn't recognize him. They were looking for a kingly hero, much like Perseus or Theseus, who would lead them in a revolution against the world's tyrants, establishing Israel as the world's superior political power and bringing about an age of peace. Even to this day, the Jewish nation is still awaiting this type of Messiah to appear.
Is Jesus the Messiah, the anointed one sent by the Father to be the Savior of Israel and the world? Christians believe that Jesus is the only one who has fulfilled the ancient prophecies in the Hebrew Scriptures or the Old Testament of the Bible, and this establishes his messianic credentials. But most Jewish people disagree. They say the Messiah has not yet come. But where does the evidence really point? We're going to debate that tonight with Dr. Michael Brown. He's president of the Fire School of Ministry in North Carolina and the author of more than 15 books, including a 3-volume series called Answering Jewish Objections to Jesus. And here's Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, author of Face Your Fear, syndicated columnist, and according to Talkers Magazine, one of the 100 most important radio hosts in America. Michael, what is the Messiah? What does that mean? And why do you believe Jesus is the Messiah?
The concept of Messiah comes from the Hebrew word Mashiach, which means anointed one. And over a period of time, God revealed to our people Israel in the Scriptures, not my opinion or your opinion, because there are different branches of Judaism and different opinions within Judaism and different groups, and there are atheistic Jews and very traditional Jews and Reformed Jews, and everyone has a different view. The one sure thing we have is what's written in the Word, and over a period of time, God spoke to us, to our forefathers, to the Jewish people, about the Messiah of Israel, that he would come and that he would die for the sins of his people, that he would be rejected by his people and yet embraced by the nations of the world, and that he would come and die and rise from the dead before the second temple was destroyed. If Jesus is not the Messiah, there can be none, because the second temple was destroyed over 1900 years ago. And the Scriptures go on to say that he would have a priestly ministry, which is one of atonement, which is one of making people come back to God, reconciliation, just like happened with me, that through him the Gentiles, the knowledge of God would go to the Gentiles around the world, and then he in fact would be embraced by his own people and would return.
Hey, Shmuley, why don't you believe that Jesus is the Messiah, specifically?
Well, I believe that Jesus is the Christian Messiah in the sense that he brought divinity and redemption to the non-Jewish nations of the world, and Christianity is a great world religion. He is certainly not the Jewish Messiah, because the Jewish Messiah is a radically different notion to the Christian Messiah. The Jewish Messiah has a political mission as opposed to a spiritual mission. We don't need a God-man to bring us closer to God. We don't need an intermediary. God says clearly in the book of Samuel, he is not a man. It is absolute sacrilege in Judaism to believe that any human being is a deity. Also, and most importantly, the Messiah must fulfill the messianic prophecies, Isaiah 11. He must cause the wolf to lie with the lamb and change human nature away from belligerence and animosity, even animal nature. Isaiah chapter 2, he has to cause men to beat their swords into plowshares. He has to bring about universal dominion of peace.
Okay,
we live in a world of indiscriminate slaughter. We live in a world where there is no justice, and the Messiah has not yet come.
Okay, Michael, what about the fact that we don't have the peace that Shmuley says was to be a prophecy for the coming of the Messiah?
Well, first he quoted some of the prophecies I firmly believe. He left out the other prophecies because Jesus fulfilled those, and only Jesus fulfilled those. For example, prophecies like Isaiah 42 and Isaiah 49 and Isaiah 50 and Isaiah 53, which speak of the suffering of the servant of the Lord and being rejected by his people and yet being accepted by the Gentile nations and bringing healing and redemption to those who believe in him. Shmuley also made the amazing statement that the Messiah's mission was political versus spiritual, and then he quotes all of these spiritual passages like Isaiah 11, which speak of the whole earth being filled with the knowledge of the glory of God, and Isaiah 2, which speak of all the nations streaming to the God of Israel. Of course it's a spiritual mission.
He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not.
Most of the world missed the Son of God because they were looking for the wrong hero, worshiping strange idols and false gods. Paul says idols are actually demons.
The things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils, and not to God. And I would not that ye have fellowship with devils. Ye cannot drink the cup of the Lord, and the cup of devils.
Satan was so successful in confusing the whole earth about the arrival of the greatest saving hero, the God of the universe, who left his royal throne in heaven to humbly save us from eternal death. By not recognizing who he was, we nailed him to a cross. Satan was victorious in blinding people from the greatest cosmic event simply by using mythological stories. What if he's doing the same thing again? Flash forward 2,000 years. Superheroes first appeared on the stands in 1933 in what is known today as the comic book. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were responsible for introducing the iconic Superman to the world, basing the character off the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche's Übermensch, the theory that there is no God, only a superior man. They originally created him to be a bald madman who used his telepathic abilities to wreak havoc on mankind. When World War II began, the Jewish writers decided to change Superman from an evil character into a good hero in hopes to conceal his German influence and make him more appealing to publishers. But at the story's core remained the Nietzschean philosophy that there is no God other than this Superman, subtly leaving hints that when you are in trouble, Superman will save you, not a priest. Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime borrowed from Nietzsche's Superman philosophy, believing they could make a race of superior men to rule the world, the Aryan race. A philosophy that once God is removed from the picture, there is no depth to which man will sink to achieve his selfish goals. Nevertheless, Nietzsche's Übermensch has endured and found its way into pop culture, and over the years Superman has been quite literally adored like a god, a mythical character from ancient times to which there is no basis of existence in the real world. Is history repeating itself and conjuring up gods to replace the one true God of heaven?
The ancient gods of Greece and Rome and Egypt still exist, only today they wear spandex and capes.
Superman is Zeus, Batman is Hades, Aquaman is Neptune, and they kind of fit into the pantheon of gods of a lot of different cultures.
Superman is as much of a Moses figure as he is a Christ figure. You know, it's coming from another world, you know, having all this power and really saving lives.
Our redemption is not going to come from here, goes the myth. Instead, we will be saved from the outside.
Batman, the Dark Knight detective, Gotham's greatest protector. His parents killed before him at an early age. He is the world's greatest detective. He's the world's greatest escape artist. And he's arguably the world's greatest hand-to-hand combatant. He also has $1 bazillion. And that's not somebody you want to go up against.
One of the reasons that Batman has been so popular for so long is his iconography is that of a demon. I mean, look at the paintings of medieval paintings of devils in museums, the bat wings, the horns. He looks like something that's dark and evil, and his origins are in an act of murder, and yet he's on your side.
Wonder Woman is a perfect transition from the ancient myths. There are echoes of the Amazons in Homer's writing that refers to a tribe of women that lived without men, that were terrifyingly efficient soldier warriors.
Flash, the fastest man alive, can move at speeds near the speed of light, can outrace a bullet to its target, can run up the side of a building, can actually cross the ocean before he has time to sink.
There's the old Flash, and then there's the new Flash. The old Flash is a perfect counterpart for Hermes or Mercury in the old myths. You know it immediately when you see the helmet with the wings on it. It refers to the god of the messengers. In a fascinating way, the artists who are creating today's comics are doing heroic work by taking the timeless tales that began in the world of myth and bringing them into the future.
Are you with me?
Jack Kirby, an artist who drew the early Superman, states where he gets his inspiration.
For some reason, I went to the Bible. I came up with Galactus. And of course, the Silver Surfer is the fallen angel.
He is drawn for dozens of the top-selling comics, such as Fantastic Four, Thor, and Captain America. Take note of the spiritual themes in these stories. And since the comics are repackaged myths, it would make sense why he came up with a whole comic series titled New Gods. The writer of the 1978 Superman film is not shy about his intentional parallels to Christ.
On Krypton, I was intending it to be almost semi-biblical, and people spoke in very stilted, elegant English. The metaphor was clearly there when Jor-El sends Superman to Earth of God sending Christ to save humanity.
You will travel far, my little Kal-El.
Hence, Superman's real name is Kal-El, which the Hebrew translation means voice of God. Identical to the description of Jesus in the first chapter of John.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only who came from the Father, full of grace and truth.
The similarities between Superman and Jesus can be seen throughout the hero's graphic media. Superman was sent by his father from the heavens down to Earth as a helpless baby, arriving in a spaceship like Moses arrived in a basket. He was raised by common parents who in the 1939 issue of Action Comics #1, his mother's name was Mary. Her name was later changed to Martha. And according to the Comic Vine website, Superman's father's name is Jonathan Joseph Kent. Mary, Martha, John, and Joseph were all names of people surrounding the life of Jesus. And just like Jesus spent time in the wilderness before his earthly mission began, Superman spent time in a Siberian wilderness before his earthly mission begins. During screen tests of the 1978 movie, Superman, Clark Kent is revealed to be 30 years old at the beginning of his mission as Superman.
Age?
30.
Note what director Bryan Singer says in The Hollywood Reporter about his film, Superman Returns.
And this was a story about Christ. It's all about sacrifice. The world, I hear their cries. So what happens? He gets the knife in the side, and later he falls to the earth in the shape of a crucifix. It was kind of nailing you on the head, but I enjoyed that because I've always found the myth of Christ compelling and moving.
Obviously, it is self-apparent that Superman was created to be a type of Christ. But what type of Christ is he really? His archenemy is Lex Luthor. Lex is Latin for law. So here we have a character that is fancied like a god who fights against the law, which is precisely the description of the Antichrist, someone who takes the place of Christ, but is far from the character of him. If Superman was an allegory for Jesus, then this comic of a demon-possessed Superman who gets tired of serving the human race and proceeds to destroy them would not fit the bill. Lowly, humble manner to save them from their sins, they didn't recognize him. They were looking for a kingly hero, much like Perseus or Theseus, who would lead them in a revolution against the world's tyrants, establishing Israel as the world's superior political power, and bringing about an age of peace. Even to this day, the Jewish nation is still awaiting this type of Messiah to appear.
Is Jesus the Messiah, the anointed one sent by the Father to be the Savior of Israel and the world? Christians believe that Jesus is the only one who has fulfilled the ancient prophecies in the Hebrew Scriptures, or the Old Testament of the Bible, and this establishes his messianic credentials. But most Jewish people disagree. They say the Messiah has not yet come. But where does the evidence really point? We're going to debate that tonight with Dr. Michael Brown. He's president of the Fire School of Ministry in North Carolina and the author of more than 15 books, including a 3-volume series called Answering Jewish Objections to Jesus. And here's Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, author of Face Your Fear, syndicated columnist, and according to Talkers Magazine, one of the 100 most important radio hosts in America. Michael, what is the Messiah? What does that mean? And why do you believe Jesus is the Messiah?
The concept of Messiah comes from the Hebrew word Mashiach, which means anointed one. And over a period of time, God revealed to our
As Israel sank lower in the ranks of society, and by the time Rome rose to power, the Israelites' desire for a Savior became focused on one that would save them from their oppressors, which is why when Jesus Christ came in a